Hi everyone, I am Chima Ruler 15, a speaker of American English, um, and one of the teachers on this Discord, and welcome to my class on one of my other classes on English grammar. Today we are going to talk about the past perfect in English, one of the most misused tenses among learners and even natives. So today we are going to avoid that. I'm going to teach you all how to avoid misusing the past perfect, as well as teaching you guys how to use the past perfect itself. And, well, two past perfects, really. There are technically two in English. But anyway, let's start with one of them. Oh, if you can't hear anything, check your audio settings. There might be something with your audio. It's like, hi, YouTube. Okay, but anyway, oh, thank you, Magical. You are oh so useful. Okay, so let's talk about what the past perfect is first. Let me make sure I'm... Okay, good. Yeah, I want to make sure I'm recording. But, okay, so what exactly is the past perfect? Oh my god. Imagine waking up with Tina whispering poggers in your ears. What if I could be an alarm? What if I were like some sort of alarm clock? That would be weird. But anyway, can you all tell me what exactly the past perfect is? Oh, hi, Uchiha. Past perfect, I had been. Yes, that's correct. No, have been is the present perfect. The past perfect would take the form of had plus what we call a past participle. So, like, had done, had been. Oh, you're fine, Nick. It's okay. Had seen. I mean, you answered it correctly. There's nothing for you to apologize for. Yeah, so that's what the past perfect is. Yeah, exactly. It's had plus V3. Verb 3 or whatever. That's what you'd call the past participle. Okay. So, well, hold on to that question. You know, your question of, I would have been there if I hadn't had to go to the store. Hold on to that question. We're going to talk about that later. Because I want to get into that later. Although, if you take the comma out, that sentence will be grammatically fine. Anyway, so, no, it should be hadn't had. That's correct. Okay, so the past perfect. Well, first of all, can someone describe to me what the rule is for using the past perfect? Or rather, what one of the rules is, because there are probably a few. There's probably not just one, but anyway. Can someone explain to me exactly what it is? Like, you guys answered what form it takes. That's correct, but can someone tell me what it is? When an action happens before, or rather happened, before some other action. Okay, so there's that one, and someone else says something happened in the past but still has an effect on the present. That would be the present perfect, actually. To describe an action that happened before another action in the past. An event that happened in the past but before another past event. Okay, so three people have said something like that. An event that happened before another event. Okay, so let me type up the rule. Let me type up the rule. This rule. Oops. Okay, so this is the rule. Okay, so what I want you to do Okay, so that's the rule, right? The past perfect is used when one action happened before another in the past. Okay, throw that rule away. Just throw it away. It's garbage. It's garbage. It's crap. Throw it away. It is not good. This is not good at all. And the reason for this is that the past simple is also used sometimes. It's sometimes used when one action happened before another in the past. Which is what the sentence I just said there. Well, actually, no, not that sentence. Let me use a different example. So, for example, I did my homework before I went to the park. Here you have one action that happens before another action, yet we didn't use the past perfect because there wasn't a need to. So, this rule that the past perfect is used when one action happens before another in the past is trash. It's not wrong. Don't get me wrong. It's not wrong. But it is trash because it is insufficient. It's not enough. There's more to the past perfect than that. So, yeah, exactly, as Magical pointed out. I had done my homework by the time I went to the park. Now, in that case, you use the past perfect because of the phrase by the time. But yeah, so the past perfect is a lot more than just use it when one action happens before another in the past. No, don't think that way. So a better way to describe the past perfect is this. The past perfect is used to connect two different points of time in the past. Roughly speaking. That's a slightly better way of expressing it. And you'll see what I mean in a moment. Okay, so we use the past perfect when we want to show that there's some sort of relationship between two different points of time in the past. And I know some people are DMing me, but they're going to have to wait until I finish this part of the explanation. So yeah, as Magical said, that sentence is not good. You would simply say, I did my work and went to the park. In that case, yeah, see. And we're going to talk about that next, how the past perfect gets misused. So, when I say that the past perfect is used to connect two different points of time in the past, well, it's similar to the present perfect, really. The only difference is that instead of the end point of some sort of span of time being in the present, it's in the past instead. So it's really not very different from the present perfect. But the past perfect just takes place entirely within the past. So it's like that. So here's an example. I had done my homework when my mother arrived. So when she came home. I had done my homework when my mother arrived. Here, this had done shows that it's connecting the point when my mother arrived with some point earlier in the past. It's showing a connection there. And let me show you what happens when you change this, when you change something like this to the present. The first verb to the past simple. So let me use a different example though. Good boy. Best boy. Okay. For those of you who have been to my previous classes, you already know what the logic is between these two sentences I'm about to type. But I will go ahead and use that example again. Okay. So here we have two different sentences. They're both almost the same, except that the first verb is in different tenses. So the first sentence is, I had finished brushing my teeth when you entered the bathroom. The second sentence is, I finished brushing my teeth when you entered the bathroom. So what's the difference between these two? They're not the same. They're both different, and the native would read these very differently. So what's the difference? The first one means I finished a minute ago. The second one means I finished just now. Yeah, kind of. There's a slightly more precise way of wording that. But that is close. No, not quite, because he entered the bathroom. Close, Luffy King, but not quite. The action was already done before. Close, but not close. You're close, but again, there's a bit more to that. No, not quite, Wolf. What was the question again? Okay, so the question was, what's the difference between... Here, let me actually just reply to this. What is the difference between these two sentences? Yes, exactly, Barry. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Yeah, in the second sentence, both actions happened at the very same time. Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. Perfect. That's perfect. So, yeah, that's the difference. When you have a conjunction like when, and when you have two clauses like that in the past simple, you're implying that they both happened at the same time. Compared to the past perfect version, which, as some people point out, means that this finishing that happened that started some time ago, and that started some time ago. So it's not like you finished right when someone entered the bathroom. You finished before, but not just before though. Like, you're showing that there's a connection between those two events, because you could do it like this here, and this is an important distinction to make. So let me type these two sentences again to show you what I mean. So now I have a different question for you guys to show you that you can't just use the past perfect every time you have one action that happened before another in the past. So here's a different one. So now I changed things up a bit. Now the second sentence is still very much the same. Oh, sorry, wait, no, my bad. Sorry, I mixed up the conjunctions. It should be this way. I'm sorry. I need sleep. The first one should have when. The second one should have before. Okay, I fixed it. Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just fixed it. Okay, so now look at the sentences. I had finished brushing my teeth when you entered the bathroom, or by the time you entered the bathroom, does not really matter in this case. And I finished brushing my teeth before you entered the bathroom. Again, these two are different. It's subtle, but there's a difference between these two. So, can you all tell me what that difference is? It's not the same difference as the one before. No, that's different. So what's the difference between these two sentences? Because the first one is still the same, but the second one is changed. I put before instead of when this time. No, not quite. Oh, okay, Carlos, what up? What's up? Yas, you got it. Perfect. Perfect. Yas, let's go. Let's us go. Yes, exactly. So, in the first, yeah, like as Carlos was saying, and I'll phrase it in a slightly better way, but the way he phrased it was still good. For the second sentence, there's a time span between the two. So, in other words, the two events are distantly spaced in time. But for the first one, there's no gap between the two events. So let me type it up again. Let me type up the sentences again and how they differ. Let's see. The second sentence. Nice reaction. Yeah, I can be. Yeah, I was trying to be funny there. Okay, so let me just type up this explanation. Hi, Abbage. Okay. I had finished brushing my teeth when you entered the bathroom. I finished brushing my teeth before you entered the bathroom. The second sentence, as Carlos pointed out, means that both events are distantly spaced in time, meaning that there's a gap between them. But the first sentence does not mean that. It does not mean that both events have a gap between them, rather that they occurred closely together. So, like, there's no gap. So that's the difference. Hence why you can't just... Ooh, whoops, hold on. Hence why it's not good to use the past perfect every time you have one action that happens before another. No. In fact, the past simple is often used when we want to express sequences of events. So, for example, I did this, then I did that, later I did this, and afterwards I did that. The past simple is often used for sequences of events in the past. The past perfect doesn't really work like that, as you guys have just seen. So the past perfect is less about the sequences of events, like showing events in time that are disconnected and that occur on different points on the timeline. The past perfect isn't really like that. It's more about showing the connection between 2 points in time. So that's why you should be careful about using the past perfect. Now, let me show you what happens when you misuse the past perfect. Let's look at this. Well, actually, before we do that, let me address a question that was just asked. And I know you guys are pinging me. It's just that a lot of people are in the chat right now, so I can't possibly answer every single thing that's directed at me. So if I miss it, don't be afraid to let me know. Because I know some people have commented on certain things. I just haven't been able to respond to every single one. I speak American English, so I have the general American accent, and I live in Texas, so. But unlike a lot of Texans there, I don't really have a Southern accent, or at least a significantly strong one. Like, if I do have one, it's very, very, very slight, like, extremely slight. Like, I sound, compared to a lot of the Southerners there, I sound more like someone from the mid-region of the United States. But yeah, I'm about to answer it, don't worry. Okay, like Chicago? No, not Chicago. No, they have a certain accent there. They have a certain accent there. I don't have anything close to that. Yeah, like I have noticed it doesn't happen very often, but there are times where I actually do have a very slight Southern pronunciation, but normally it's pretty neutral. Does every state have its own accent? Not necessarily. It's more about regions than states, really. But anyway, let me go to DiscoBot's question. So he asked, I did not get the time gap. What do you mean by that? Well, by the time gap, I mean that when two events happen in the past, they can be connected, or they can happen at the same time, or they can be disconnected and be separated by a gap. So like it's just basically one of those three, traits. So what I mean by a gap in time is that these two events, like one happened sometime after the other did. So you could say something like, I went to the store before I called my mom. So you went to the store first, and then sometime later you called your mom. And it doesn't really matter what that gap is. It could be a minute or a second or an hour or whatever. It could be any gap in time. It basically shows that these two events are not connected in any way. Gap interval? Yeah, basically just a short amount of time, space, etc. So when I said earlier that the past simple is that sentence with, here, let me scroll up to it actually. The sentence, I finished brushing my teeth before you entered the bathroom, that shows that there's a gap between these two events and that they're not connected. It could have been a minute, though, or a second. It really doesn't matter how big the gap is. The point is that these two events are not connected. Whereas the first one implies that there is a connection, that you had finished brushing your teeth when someone entered the bathroom. No gap there. But this one, I finished brushing my teeth before you entered the bathroom. That's a gap. If that makes sense. Have been gone. That would be the present perfect, which we're not discussing here. Okay, oh, you thought I was from the mid areas? Yeah, again, my accent is pretty neutral. Some people have neutral accents in Texas. Some have very pronounced southern accents, and some are more in the middle. But anyway, I said distantly spaced, as in distant, or far away. Well, relatively speaking. Is there a standard American accent for everyone to learn? I get, honestly, I don't know. I think so. Like, I think so. It's just that there are several American accents, so I don't know if there's a standard. I don't know if there's can really be called a standard one. Although I guess it would be the same as a general one. So I guess there is one, but I'm honestly not sure. There are other people who are more who know more about this topic than I do. But anyway, oh, I almost forgot. My mistake. Okay, so Abich actually asked a very good question. So, the past perfect. So, in his sentence, he said, the Vikings had sailed to Norway in 1050. Okay, so here's an issue with the past perfect. One issue with the past perfect is that... Here, let me actually type it. It's not so much an issue with the past perfect, just an issue with how people use it. So, yeah, see, Nevermore, you read my mind. Thank you. Yeah, do not use the past perfect in isolation. Do not. It will sound incomplete. So when you say something like, I had gone to the store, well, people would expect you to add more to that. So it's like, so let me type it again. I had gone to the store. Yeah, but did anything else happen? Because that had gone implies that there's more to the story than that. So when you use the past perfect by itself like that, it sounds incomplete. So at this point, you should just use the past simple, as Jaspreet just said. I went to the store. Yeah, Wolf said it too. Yeah, and Discobot even said it. I think had should not be used in the sentence. Exactly. Don't use the past perfect by itself like that. Now, if there's additional context, then it's fine. And this context can be stated or implied. So let's take that same sentence again and add a bit more to it. Oops. Okay, so, God, no, okay. I went to purchase the food for dinner. Yes, if you're talking about specific food. Otherwise, you don't really need the article there, but other than that, that's fine. So, if you have additional context for the past perfect, if it's stated or implied, then it's fine. So in the first case, it's outright expressed. But in the second case, it's implied. So you can use it by itself if there's additional context that's implied. So for example, I called you at 10 a.m. Yes, and by that time, I had already gone to the store. So in that case, we don't need to use we can use the past perfect by itself, and it'd be fine because again, there's additional context that supports it. It's not stated, but it's implied. So to further expand on the second sentence here. Yeah, Magical pointed out, it sounds incomplete. The past perfect sounds incomplete by itself. So let's say person A said, I called you at 12 p.m. Yes, and by that time, I had already gone to the store. So in that case, the past perfect in for person B's sentence was used by itself. But it's fine because there's additional context. I called you at 12 p.m. So we don't really need to express that context again. So if the context is implied, then it's fine to use the past perfect by itself. Otherwise, Otherwise, don't use the past perfect by itself. It will sound really weird. The past perfect cannot stand in isolation because, as I said before, it's used to show the relationship between two different points in time. It's meant to connect two different points in time in the past. So if you use it by itself, well, without any additional context, then it's just going to sound weird because the past perfect is not meant to be used for a single event, a single point of time in the past. It just doesn't work that way. When Venus arrived at the party, Nick had already gone home. Yeah, that's a perfect use for it. Use of it. I had learned JavaScript before HTML. Such a big mistake. Is this correct? No, because that's what I was talking about earlier. You put had learned when learned would just be fine. And this is another issue that I want to talk about. Using the past perfect when the past simple would be just fine. So let me put this example here. I have an example here I typed up. Let's read this passage together. Let's read this passage together. I had left the house and had gone to the grocery store. I had picked up some milk and some bread. I had paid for my items and had gone straight home after that. Do you see how clunky this passage sounds? It does not sound very good, does it? Because you're using the past perfect in so many ways. Yeah, exactly. Too many hads. There are too many here. But this is something that a lot of learners struggle with. They use the past perfect when it's just not necessary. Although this is pretty much an exaggerated example, so not every learner types like this or writes like this, but yeah, like don't do that, please. Don't do that. It your sentences will sound really weird and clunky and stupid, honestly. So be careful with how you use the past perfect, please. Again, that's a bit of an extreme example. It's more that learners just, mix up past simple and past perfect. But this is why you don't want to overuse the past perfect. It just doesn't sound very good. Don't use the past perfect when the past simple would be just fine. So yeah, how would you improve it? Okay, here, I'll show you. Now, I know people are asking me questions. Just hold on. I'm about to get to them. No, it's not useless. It's just not necessary a lot of the time. The past perfect does have its uses. It's just not necessary a lot of the time, but some people overuse them. It's usually non-natives that do it, but natives have been known to misuse the past perfect too. So just be really careful about that. Okay. So let's fix this, because this is just very ugly looking. Oops. Okay. Okay, let me clean this out. Okay, now let's look at the revised passage. Revised passage. Oh, whoops, sorry. I should have... Let me fix that. My mistake. So, this should be went. There. Okay. There we go. Yeah, see? Exactly. I'm sorry. I left the house and went to the grocery store. I picked up some milk and some bread. I paid for my items and... Oops. See... I meant to put went for the last one. My mistake. Sorry. Yeah, my mistake. I didn't catch that. Okay, yeah, there. Now it's perfect. I paid for my items and went straight home after that. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, I missed that. My mistake. I forgot to change that because, again, like, because again, sometimes English has unique past participles like gone, and sometimes the past participles take the same form as the past simple, or in this case, picked, picked, or paid, or whatever. There. So now the passage is so much better. So when is the best time to use the past perfect? When you want to show a relationship between 2 points of time in the past. That is a connection between the two. Because again, going back to my sentence earlier, here, let me go back to it. Let's see, where is it? No, not that one. It's somewhere up. There we go. Okay. Okay, so going back to these two sentences here, and let me highlight that the two verbs are, let me highlight these two different verbs. Going back to these two sentences right here. Oops. Oh my god. Sorry. That second one should be a when, not before. There. Perfect. Okay. Going back to these two sentences before, when you use the past perfect here, you're implying that there was some sort of span of time. That is, you finish your brushing your teeth happened at some point. Well, sorry, no. When you finish brushing your teeth, that happened some point before you entered the bathroom, but there's no gap. There's no gap. Like the act of you finishing brushing your teeth, that was more drawn out. It wasn't exactly like I did this before I did that. No, it was more of I had done this by the time this had happened. If that makes sense. So like you can see that with the past perfect, there's really no gap between the two events. Like they're not distantly spaced in time. Like one happened like right when another did. Like right after another did, I should say. But unlike with two past simples, with the past perfect, it shows that it's like with the present perfect. Some action started in the past and then ended at another point in the past. And that's what's happening here. Hence why there can be no gap when it comes to the past perfect. Of course, I know that this can be quite hard to understand. Like, to me, it's easier to explain this with a picture than with words, because I have a mental picture of the tenses, but sometimes it's hard to explain them. Okay, so to repeat, you use the past perfect in a manner similar to the present perfect, like that there's a span of time. So when you finish brushing your teeth, and then you enter the bathroom, someone else entered the bathroom. Sorry. With the past perfect, you're implying that that your process of brushing your teeth started at some point in time and then ended when someone else entered the bathroom, instead of like with the past simple where it's like I finished right when you entered. So do you see how the past perfect makes the action seem more drawn out in that case? Yeah, that probably does simplify it. Yeah, those events happened with each other for I finished brushing my teeth when you entered the bathroom. I think there might be a better way of phrasing the second one here. Because for the second sentence here, technically time did pass for I finished brushing my teeth before you entered the bathroom, but but we don't really know exactly what the time span is, just that these events like were not connected in any way. I think if you switch like your second I think if you switch your second explanation with your first, then that's would be fine. Yeah, like if you switch these two here, then that comment would be fine. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of the time. Oh, no, sorry. No, you're thinking of the wrong one. It's I finished brushing my teeth before you entered the bathroom. That's the one that has an amount of time between the two actions. Okay. So, someone else just asked a really good question here. You can still use the past perfect with after before. Okay, so those aren't the keywords for it. Keywords for the past perfect would be like by the time. That's an example. But not always though. But that is often a keyword for the past perfect. Not always, but it often is. But with after before, okay, and I need to explain this too. So let's take this example. I had finished my homework before my mom came home. Let's do that. Let's do that. Okay? So sometimes people will use the past perfect with the conjunction before. Okay, so this is not necessary, and let me tell you why. This is one of the reasons why the past perfect is often misused. It's not necessary to use the past perfect here. And the reason for this is that the past perfect already implies, its very nature already implies that one action happened before another. So the word before there makes the whole sentence logically redundant. So if you use the past perfect with before, you can do that, or with after as well, but that's logically redundant, because the past perfect already implies that one action happened before another, though in a different way than from how the past simple would do it. So honestly, you can use it with the conjunctions before or after, but before and after, I should say. But I wouldn't recommend it. Because again, like, the past perfect already implies the words before or after, before and after, so there's really no need to use it with those words. Yeah, exactly, Wolf. You see it. Yeah, exactly. Is the past perfect commonly used in the essay, something like that? No, it's actually one of the it's actually one of the least frequently used tenses. Although it's more common than the future perfect, which we're not going to talk about here. Emma, hello, wie geht's dir? How are you? Okay, so keywords for the past perfect. I actually kind of don't like the idea of keywords, because that might prompt people into using. That might prompt people to use the past perfect when it isn't necessary. By the time is often used with the past perfect. That's one thing, but not always. So, for example. By the time I came home, my brother had messed up our room. So, often with the phrase by the time, my brother had messed up the room, like with that now the past perfect would be used in that situation, but there are exceptions to this. Now, I know some people ask some questions. Just hold on, I'll get to them. Sehr gut, Emma, danke. I'm doing very well, Emma. Thank you. Oh, you have to go, Nick? Okay, bye. But thank you for your comments. You actually contributed quite a bit to the class. I'm learning German. Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch. Ich lerne Deutsch. Okay, by the time the police arrived, the criminal was gone. Okay. By the time the police arrived at the house, the criminal was gone. In this case, you don't need to use the past perfect with by the time, because it really wouldn't make any sense. So you'd have to use the past simple here. By the time the police arrived at the house, the criminal was gone, not had been gone. Had been doesn't quite make any sense here, because had been would imply that he was gone for a while but then suddenly came back, whereas was implies that he left and he was still gone when the police arrived. So yeah, in that case you would not use the past perfect, had been. Yeah, you can add already to the sentence as well, that's fine. By the time the police arrived at the house, the criminal was already gone. Yeah, that's fine. Going back to Magical's question here. Yeah, exactly. See, yeah, Magical, you pretty much figured out what the answer to your question. So, the sentence, he had been murdered by the time the police arrived. This is the past perfect still, but the past perfect form is had been. It's had been. Murdered is not part of that. It's a past participle functioning as an adjective. Because remember, in English, participles, whether they be present participles or, with the ing forms, or past participles, with the ed forms at the end, the ed ending, they can be adjectives. That's what a participle is by definition, a verb that can function as an adjective. So, in this case, murdered is an adjective, and it's not part of the tense here. So he had been murdered by the time the police arrived. Had been is the past perfect. And as you said, it's the past perfect passive, not the past perfect active. And for those of you who don't know what active or passive voice is, active voice is when the subject does the action. Passive voice is when the subject has an action done to it. Or here, let me just show you an example. So, I delivered the newspapers. Let's add news. I should say the past perfect is not necessarily that the subject has an action done to it, just that the subject has an. Well, actually, no. I'm sorry. That is correct. I should point out that whoever did the action is not necessarily stated. Yeah, that's how I should say it. Okay, so let me show you an example. Okay. So, the first one here, I delivered the newspapers. That's active voice. The newspapers were delivered. Oops, I meant to put newspapers there. Were delivered by me. That's passive voice. And you can see that the subject is having an action done to it, and the agent doesn't necessarily have to be stated. Like, you could omit the by me, and if it's understood from the... Well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be understood from the context. You could actually just leave that part ambiguous. Like, you don't always have to say who did the action with the passive voice. So, you could say the newspapers were delivered, and that's fine. But if you want to specify that it was done by you, then yeah, you would have to put by me in there. So, like, you could say the keys were lost. That's also passive. Or the keys got lost. That's also technically passive. As well as a shot was fired. That's also passive. Yeah, Chi-Man teaches the class. The class is taught by Chi-Man. Yeah, see, you get it. The door, it should be has been painted, but I see what you mean there. I ate breakfast. The breakfast was eaten. Yeah. And if you want to specify that you ate the breakfast, but, de-emphasize the fact that the subject did it, you could say that the person did it, or whatever. The breakfast was eaten by me. Although, that would sound weird. because the passive voice in English is, it should be used with caution, because if you overuse it, it will make you sound rather weak and unnatural. Like, imagine saying things like, the breakfast was eaten by me, or the homework was done by me. Don't do that. Don't use the passive voice unless you have to, please. Yeah, it's used to de-emphasize whoever did the action, really. Or to completely hide whoever did the action, really, because again, you don't have to specify the agent if you don't want to. Yes, ooh, look at Emma being all fancy. She's using the progressive form. The mouse was being chased by the cat. The cat was chasing the mouse. Yeah, see? Yeah, exactly. The passive voice isn't wrong. But if you don't use it carefully, you will sound weak and unnatural. Because in English, we tend to use active voice most of the time, and with good reason. Of course, there are times where the passive voice is appropriate and should be used. Okay, but anyway, yeah, going back to Magical's question. You're welcome, Magical. And yeah, exactly, that's a passive form. Okay, let me see if there are any other questions, and let me see. Yeah, and I see that a few hands are raised too. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten you guys. No, we don't use had in the sentence I used, Wolf, because it's not a matter of redundancy in this case. It just wouldn't make any sense semantically. By the time the police arrived at the house, the criminal had been gone. No, that doesn't make any sense. You're implying that the criminal was gone for a while but then came back. No. You'd have to use the past simple to show that the criminal left and was still gone. Okay, I attacked the bear. The bear was attacked. Yeah, exactly. See, you guys get it. Okay, are there any other written sentences here? Written questions, sorry. Well, typed questions, I should say. So far, Magical has provided a good explanation. I would just, with this explanation right here, I would switch explanation number 1 with explanation number 2. Because otherwise it's fine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was actually thinking of something like that, but I didn't mention it. Yeah, exactly. As Lagrange just said, you could say by the time the police arrived, the criminal had left. Yeah, if you change the verb, then you can use the past perfect there. Exactly. But for the verb to be, no, don't use the past perfect. It would not make any sense. Yeah, exactly. See? Okay, now, are there any other questions anyone has? Like, I'm gonna stop for a while so you guys can ask questions, because I've been talking for quite a while. And while you guys are asking questions in the chat, let me go to people here who are waiting to speak. And I just called someone up, so let's see what they have to say. Now, someone actually made a good point earlier. So if you're not getting the logic of the past perfect, it's best if you just do a bunch of reading and listening and you'll acquire it that way. You'll just start to get a sense of it. So if it doesn't make sense to you now, it will make sense to you at some point. That's weird. He's not coming up. I gave him an invitation. Oh, he left. Oh, okay. Well, I'll go to the next person. Come on up. Hi.
Hello.
What's up?
Hi. Okay, so I want to make sure that I actually get it right
Okay.
about the past perfect. So basically, sometimes we talk about something that happened in the past, okay? For example, Venus arrived at the party. But when we want to use the past perfect, we're gonna this is the like a starting point of the story. Then if we want to like talk about the thing that happened before the time, the specific time, that's when we're gonna use the past perfect, right? Like there was a time, I mean, something happened in the past, and actually something else happened before that. For example, like when Sarah arrived, like when Venus arrived, whatever, at the party, Nick had already gone home. Like this is something that had happened before Sarah arrived. So basically, is that it? Because
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, you used it correctly there. Though, one thing I should point out is that, again, be careful because the past simple can sometimes be used when an action happens before another action. So, and in that case, the difference would be that these two events have like no connection with each other. Like there's, no, I'm sorry, no. It with the past simple in that case. Like if you say something like, Nick left before I came to the party, you're implying that these two events have some sort of gap in between them, like they're not connected at all. But with your
yeah,
example, when I arrived at the party, Nick had already gone home. That shows no connection. Like one happened right after the other. If that makes sense.
yeah. So okay, so basically, if I'm trying to make it with another example, like for example, somebody broke into the office during the night, and we arrive at work in the morning, and then we call the police. If I'm gonna make all of these together to try to make a past perfect, it's gonna be like we arrived at work in the morning and found that somebody had broken into the office during the night, because this is something that had happened in the past. Like this is the past, and this like activity finished in the past. That's why we are using the past perfect,
Yeah.
right? Because I might sometimes like confuse it with the present perfect. Like present perfect, for example, we're going to use have seen and have past participle. So basically, we are using it with something happened in the past and continue to the now, and it's finished now. But for the past perfect, like as it is past, this is something that had finished in the past, right? Like I'm trying to
Yeah. Yeah. And when you think about it,
difference.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you think about it, it's actually very similar to the present perfect. Like both are used when some action started in the past, but has some sort of lasting consequences, or is somewhat relevant to another point in the timeline. But the difference is that with the present perfect, that endpoint is in the present, but with the past perfect, that endpoint's in the past. So they're similar, but yeah, like you use it when you want to express like some sort of connection between two different points of time. That's what the perfect tense is used for. It's like it's used to show that whatever event started at one point in the past will have relevant, lasting or relevant consequences uh, up to another point in the past. Kind of like that.
Hmm. Yeah, I get it now. Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, no problem.
So, and also I have another question, but it's not actually related to the past perfect. Like we
Oh,
should just ask questions about this, or
oh
is
well.
it okay if I ask it? I don't know.
Um,
Is it okay?
yeah, it's
I
all.
mean, I can ask you a very, yeah, it's about, I mean, you mentioned it already about a future perfect.
Oh,
Like, that's another thing that really confused me because I don't really get it. Like, in my native language, there is no difference between the future and the future perfect. And so basically, that's why I am saying that when are we going to use that, and how can I defer these two together? And what are the differences when I'm going to use use future in my sentence, and you're going to hear it? And what if I'm going to use the future perfect in my sentence? What do you going to get by this tense instead of the future only? I mean, simple future. I don't know if we're going to call that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Actually, that's not too unrelated to the topic because we're talking about, because I mentioned the present perfect as well. So the present perfect, past perfect, and future perfect, they all work in very similar ways, but the endpoints of these events all occur at different points in time. So with the present perfect, you have an action that started in the past and has either led up to now or or is somehow relevant to now. For
Mhm.
for the past perfect, it's similar, but instead of the endpoint of the event being in the present, it's in the past, like at some other point of time in the past. And with the future perfect, it's some point in the future. So when you say something like, by the time my son comes home from the military, we will have already planned a surprise party for him. So we would use the past perfect there because we want to show that the event started at some point in the past, or actually not even necessarily in the past when it comes to the future perfect. The starting point could be in the present for all we know, but then it like leads up into it leads up to the future at some point, and that point being when my son comes home from the military. So
Uh-huh.
it's kind of like a span of time. I think that's how to describe the perfect tenses. They're like spans of time rather than single points in time, like the past
Yeah.
simple or the yeah.
Yeah, so we are actually limited by the time. Like when we, for example, something will be completed before a time in the future. Like there's a, for example, nine, we're gonna like arrange a party at 9 p.m. and it is already finished at, for example, 8 p.m., but we are talking about the future. That's when we are going to use the future perfect, right?
I'm sorry. Could you?
For example,
Okay, go ahead.
if I'm gonna give an example for that, for example, we are late. The movie will already have started by the time we get there. So basically, this is a time that we are thinking about in the future, and we are like limiting ourselves to the time, and that's when we are using the future perfect. Like because I don't get it. Like if I'm gonna use we are late, the movie will be ready the time we get to the theater. What is the differences between these two? I mean, is this even necessary to have future perfect? Like, that's my question. Like,
Oh,
so
okay.
basically, as you said, it's when we are using, like, we have a specific time, we are talking about a time.
Okay. Yeah. So you used it correctly there. Like by the time we get to the movie, it will have already started or something like that. So um, so as I said, like we use the perfect tenses when we want to like connect. I think of them as connectors of two different points of time in the past. Like I think of them as
Mhm.
spans of time compared to the past simple or the present simple or the future simple, which tend to focus only on single points of time in the past. So um, so for if you have a sentence like we will arrive at the movies at 9 p.m. In that case, there's really no need to use the future perfect because again, there's no additional context and therefore no other point you could connect that event to. But if you say something like, by the time we get to the movies, the our movie will have already started. Um, in that case,
Yeah.
you would need it. Like it would not make any sense to use only the future simple there. It wouldn't sound right because we were trying to connect two different points of time in the past. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah, I get it. So basically, we are using it in a complex sentence. when we are trying to like explain something more than this, like we are talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like
Okay.
where it's like with the perfect tenses, um, well, actually, well, the present perfect is like an exception to this, but with the past perfect and future perfect, we often need additional context for the sentence to
Mhm.
make sense. It could be a clause, as you pointed out, like a complex sentence, or it could be a phrase. So you could have something as simple as "By then, I will have already finished the assignment," so, or "By then, he had already done this or that." Like so, yeah, you're right. Like we do need more context for the past perfect and future perfect to make sense.
Yeah, it's like we're waiting for the person to talk more. For example, if I'm gonna use like past perfect, like they had been married for 3 years. If I'm gonna say that, you are waiting for my sentence to be finished.
Yeah,
Like what else?
yeah, because
Okay.
yeah, exactly. People would expect more. Like you say something like "We've been married for 20 years," and then someone would be like, "Okay, when?" Like we'd want you to finish that thought.
When there's time. Yeah, exactly. I get it. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're welcome.
Um, yeah. Okay, so I think that I'm done. But I for actually I just made a example for myself. Can I read it for you? So
Yeah,
uh,
perfect.
okay, okay. So for example, my parents have been married for 20 years. I am using this as a present perfect without actually needing to put it in a complex structure in a sentence. Like I'm using only one sentence, and this is correct, right? For the present perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's as I said. Yeah, like with the present perfect, that's one exception. You don't really have to add
Yeah,
additional
you told me.
context. Yeah, yeah. See,
And
you're
for
getting it.
future perfect, yeah, and for the future perfect, I said like next year they will have been married for 21 year. So basically, I am curtailing myself with next year, and that's why instead of using simple future, I'm using the future perfect,
Yeah, see, you're
right?
getting it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm done with the questions.
No, no problem. And I'm
Yeah.
actually glad you asked that because, like, people get confused with the present perfect and future perfect as well. Um, and one more important thing I should note regarding the present perfect, we don't use it with specific time frames. So if you say something like, "I have gone to the movies yesterday," no, that doesn't work. It should be "I went to the movies yesterday," because that's a
Mhm.
single point of time. Which the perfect tense, the present perfect tense, doesn't really work well with single points in time. So
Yeah. So for example, like I have lived in a house for 16 years. So basically, this is a period of time that happened in the past till now.
yeah.
Like till now, which is 16 years. That's why I am using the present perfect. But usually, you said like this is not common among native speakers. So, I mean, if we are using it, it shows that how um I don't know how proficient we are, because I'm trying to have a conversation, like have an interview with a native speaker in the future, and I really want to know if I use good grammar in my talking, it will impress the guy eventually. Like,
Oh, okay.
is it really matter on the grammar?
Okay. Regarding the usage of the present perfect, um, so I haven't really commented on it that much in this class, but that's one point I should mention. So there are times where you can use either the past simple or present perfect, and it would not matter. Like there would be a slight difference, but it would be pretty negligible. So you could say something like, "I went to the movies" or "I've gone to the movies." In either case, you can use that. That's fine. Like both are fine in that case. The present perfect just means something slightly different, but again, the meaning is pretty much the same. So,
Hmm.
but in that case, that's where American English and British English differ, because we Americans tend to use the past simple more often in cases like that, whereas people of British English tend to use the present perfect more often. So,
Yeah.
so that's something to consider. And But with the, and I think a similar thing happens with the present perfect. As someone here in the chat pointed out, it seems that British English speakers use the past perfect a bit more frequently than American speakers do. Like, we don't really use the past perfect that much. Although, with the past perfect, though, there are actually times where you could use it or the past simple and the meaning would not change. Like, you could say something like, oh, I almost forgot about that, or oh, I had almost forgotten about that. In that case, either one's fine. But they mean slightly different things, but either one's fine. So that's one thing to keep in mind.
Thank you. So basically, this is my first time, in this class. I would like to know, like, do we have other exercises, like, if we want to practice grammar in the class, or is it just teaching? I mean, we do practice in the chat, but do we have, like, the specific practicing sessions for the grammar?
Normally we do. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it for this class. I'll do it tomorrow, but not for this class. Like, the practice session will be separate. So,
okay.
Yeah. So we'll do it tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. Thank you with your good questions.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, you guys have been asking very good questions. And yeah, she made a lot of good points. Like, the perfect tenses, we use them when, like, with the past perfect and future perfect, you need additional context for those to make sense. With the present perfect. I keep mixing these names up. We have too many tenses in English. With the present perfect, no additional context is needed, but you can't use it with very specific time frames. It just doesn't work that way. So you can't say something like, I've gone to the doctor at 3 o'clock. No, I went to the doctor at 3 o'clock. But anyway, do we even need tenses? I mean, technically no. I mean, there are some languages that don't have them. Chinese being the most obvious example. But I feel like with tenses, we don't really have to worry about, I don't know, actually. I feel like they do have a use, but I can't quite explain what it is. But, well, anyway. But Emma asked a question earlier. I'm trying to see if I can find it. I wasn't able to answer it, but... Okay, so she asked, is there something like the gerundive in English too? I don't even know what that is, to be honest. Yeah, there are some grammar terms that even I'm not familiar with. I'm like, what? What is that? So the house is to be built by me would be an example. Okay. Yeah, that's technically possible in English, but that does sound weird. The house is to be built by me. I mean, if you say the house is to be built, that can work. But the house is to be built by me, I mean, that can also work, but it just sounds weird. And honestly, quite formal too. I mean, I'm sure there are a few contexts where you can use that, but typically you would just say, you would either eliminate the by me part, or just rephrase that sentence to be active voice. Sounds weird and sounds like something I'd say to a member of the royal family. Yeah, exactly. A form of a Latin verb ending in ndus and functioning as an adjective meaning that should or must be done. I guess English does have something like that. Honestly, I don't even know. Yeah, either way, like, that's really not a common way to say things like that. You would just say, the house will be built. The house is to be built can work in formal context, though. Or the house is to be built by me, even, although that sounds even weirder than the house is to be built. But anyway, let me go to the next question. And after that, I do need to go and talk about the past. I do need to talk about the past perfect subjunctive as well, not just the past perfect indicative. But come on up, Wolf. Hi.
Hello, mate. What's up?
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So I want to say thank you for this explanations happening in the grammar. And I wanted to say, like, throughout these years, I've actually studied this grammar because I loved it so much. But since I came to the past perfect, now simple, it's gone a little bit ambiguous. So now it's not even, let's say, it's not even clear to me when do we use the past perfect, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was afraid of that. Like, I felt like some of my explanations were a little confusing because it's hard to, it's honestly kind of hard to explain because I can sense when to use it, but it's hard to put in words. Like, it's just very abstract.
So, does it actually, is it different when people living in, let's say, in Britain or United Kingdom using it differently from people saying it in America? Because you know how these slangs developed, and American people actually slang is more informal than the British one when they're talking to each other. Does it actually affect the grammar when it comes to the past perfect? Do you think like that?
Honestly, huh.
It's weird because I've been thinking about it right now. Because let's say I used to talk with British people before, and they used had with the keywords before and after. But when I talk to Americans, never have I ever heard anyone actually saying it, and it's complicating a bit. And when we studied it before, the keywords were before and after. But I understand when it comes to the gap and the timings. So let's say two actions in the same context or sentence actually happen at the same time. When you've done something, let's say came or happened, but before and after it's some kind of a redundancy. You know what I mean? So we need to omit these before and after. Maybe that's how it's different with American people. Maybe because of the language and how it has developed since.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that was actually talked about a bit earlier, but yeah, I'm glad you brought it up again because in British English they use the past perfect more often than we Americans do, and I honestly just find it unnecessary because, like, yeah, exactly, like semantically, like the past perfect already means something like before or after, so putting it in with those conjunctions just sounds redundant and clunky, but that's how they do it. I mean, we can still understand them, but the way, like that can be confusing for people who are like studying both, and it's like, wait, why are they using it two different ways? I don't know. Language is stupid like that.
No, I totally agree with you because you actually mentioned it or explained it perfectly because like most of the times when you talk to American people, they actually don't say hat or they just say at like would, but it just comes off with like the D after the I. Let's say I'd picked up, but they rarely use it in America, I think. But in British people, they use it more frequently than the Americans. So that was the explanation I'm looking for to hear. So thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
And you're doing great, actually. Your explanation. I love grammar, man. And
Same.
You made it more and more interesting.
Oh, thank you.
No problem, man. So that was my question.
Okay.
Take care, man.
You too.
Bye.
Yeah, everyone's like, wow, his voice does sound intimidating. Yeah, it did. No, that's not although, yeah, like, I liked his voice, though. Yeah, his voice was pretty cool. Compare, yeah. Compared to mine, which is like, people call me a girl sometimes on the phone. I'm used to it, though. But I actually don't mind my voice, but yeah, I like his. Like, I think everyone's voice is unique, really. Yeah, I like Wolf's voice, though. Yeah, he would definitely yeah, podcasts. I think he'd be good at that, really, or maybe audiobooks. Oh, thank you, Barry. You get a heart. But okay, I need to go and talk about the past perfect subjunctive as well, because we talked so much about the indicative form. Now let's talk about the. Oh, thank you, Emma. Now let's talk about the subjunctive form as well. So with the past perfect subjunctive, it takes the same form as the indicative. Well, I should talk about what the indicative and the subjunctive are. So, what exactly is the indicative mood, and what is the subjunctive mood? So grammatical mood, it refers to how a speaker feels about what they're saying. So when you have the indicative mood deals with, here, let me type it. The indicative mood, indicative mood deals with facts and things that are believed to be true, versus the subjunctive mood, which deals with recommendations, wishes, desires, demands, any directive or wish or hypothetical, really. Hypotheticals I should include as well. So basically things that aren't real. That would be the subjunctive mood. And yeah, there's also the imperative mood for issuing commands. Yeah, so that's what the indicative mood is, and that's what the subjunctive mood is. And the imperative mood as well. So when I talk about the past perfect subjunctive, what form? No, that's not a grammar rule. Just like, well, I guess it's more of like an explanation for two different parts of English. For two different parts of the English language, like grammatical mood. It's more of an explanation rather than a rule. Because these two moods are fairly complicated, and they can even differ in usage between languages. Like Spanish has a more robust subjunctive mood than English does, as well as French and German. They also use the subjunctive more than English speakers do. But yeah. But yeah, basically the subjunctive deals with things like wishes or demands or requests, recommendations, whatever. The subjunctive technically does exist in English. It's just that in many instances it looks just like the indicative forms, the respective indicative forms. So, like with the present subjunctive, for example, you use the base form of the verb. You know how in the indicative form you conjugate, like I have, you have, he has, she has, it has, we have, you all have, they have. Well, in the subjunctive, it's all just have. So it would be even he have, or she have, or it have. So with the subjunctive, you technically do conjugate, but every person receives the same conjugation. So it's as if you weren't conjugating. But you technically are, just that everyone has the same. It's just that everyone has the same conjugation. So let me show you an example. So the indicative: I have, you have, he has, we have, etc. We have, they have. Wait, let me just finish that. They have. Whereas the subjunctive is like I have, you have, he have, we have, and they have. So for example, I think that he has a study partner. This is an indicative sentence. And yeah, as someone else pointed out, the subjunctive and the conditional moods overlap. But we'll talk about the conditional later. So the... Oh, you have to go, Barry? Okay, bye. Thank you for coming. So the subjunctive would be, I recommend that he have a study partner. Oops, I can't type today. Okay, let's see. The indicative, I think he has a study partner. The subjunctive, I recommend that he have a study partner. And another thing, I should also point out that in British English, the subjunctive, with the present subjunctive, I should say, they don't really use it in British English. So they would say something like, I recommend that he has a study partner, or I recommend that he should have a study partner. Whereas whereas we Americans would just use the subjunctive form. I recommend that, or why did I say I recommended? I mean, that's technically correct, but I wanted to just say recommend. Okay. I recommend that he have a study partner. Oops, I misspelled it. Okay, wow. I really can't type today. Okay, there we go. So, they're both correct, but they mean different things. I think that he has a study partner. I believe for a fact that he has a study partner. The subjunctive would be like, I recommend that he have a study partner, or I insist that he have a study partner. So yeah, both of them are right. I saw your image, Emma. But anyway. No, it's just he have. The should isn't exactly necessary there. You can put it in there, but it's not necessary. Like, we Americans don't use should like that. British English speakers do, but we don't. It's not grammatically wrong either way, though. If I hadn't just learned the subjunctive, I would have even tried to correct your second sentence. Ha! I see what you did there. If I hadn't just learned the subjunctive. And I should point out that the subjunctive has two tenses. So there's no future subjunctive in English. It's just the present and the past subjunctive forms. And the past subjunctive forms take the same form as the past indicative forms, but except in the case of the verb were. So it's like indicative would be like, I was, you were, he was, we were, they were. Whereas the subjunctive, the past subjunctive of the verb to be would be I were, you were, he were, we were, and they were. So again, with the subjunctive mood, you do conjugate, but everyone gets the same conjugation. So there are no different conjugations, no unique conjugations. I were, you were, he were, we were, they were. Or in the case of the present subjunctive, it would be I be, you be, he be, we be, they be, instead of I am, you are, he is, she is, it is. You get the point. Okay. No, we don't. It's not that we omit should in that case. We just don't use it, period. Like, because I think when you say omit like that, I think you're implying that like using should is like the regular form. No, actually, that's just no. It's actually the traditional way of using the subjunctive here is to just use the base form, but British English speakers will put a should in there often, which isn't wrong, but we Americans don't really do that. I recommend you be a better person. Yes, see? Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, exactly. That's why if I were, or I wish I were a cat. Yeah, see? Does he have had the same meaning as he should have? Yeah, it's the same here. Yeah, it's the same here. Yeah, you're right, Wolf. It's the same. but like as you can see, in most cases, the subjunctive looks just like the indicative. So to tell the difference between the two, you'd have to rely on the context. So yeah. Well, the indicative is used when we want to express facts or things that are believed to be true. The subjunctive is when we want to express things that aren't real, like hypotheticals such as, if only you hadn't failed the test, or demands such as, I insist that you be here on time. It's stuff like that. He wishes he were a dog. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, what was I going to say? Someone else asked another question. Like, I should have studied. No, that's a different, that's not subjunctive at all. That's something else. That's something else. Okay. No, that's not a conditional, Carlos. I wish I were a cat is not a conditional. If you want to say something like, if you want to say something like, if I were a cat, blah, 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 like that would be a conditional. Yeah, conditional sentence type 2. So, right, I'll talk about conditionals in a moment, but basically, now let's talk about, okay, so there are 8 different forms of the subjunctive. So you have, here are the present subjunctive forms. So you have the simple. So, like let's take for example the verb to be. Okay, to be. So the simple would be be. The continuous would be being. The perfect would be have been. And then the perfect continuous would be have been being. And then you have the past subjunctive forms of the verb to be. So the simple aspect would be were. The continuous would be were being. Yeah, you can also use the past subjunctive in a continuous context. So you could say something like, I wish I were, I'm trying to think of an example. I wish he weren't being locked up. So in that case, that could be continuous. So perfect would be had been, and then perfect continuous would be had been being. Oh, but good night, Kim. Thank you for being here. Okay, so let me put this here. Actually, no. Let me take that out. Okay, so there are 8 forms of the subjunctive in English. So you have the simple, be, continuous, be being, perfect, have been, perfect continuous, have been being. But, okay, let me point out something here. This be being here is never used in English. So don't worry about it. It's never used. This is one of those verb forms that you don't use in English. So I was just showing you an example of this, of how it would be conjugated in English. But we don't use that form in that way. Or that form, the continuous form in the subjunctive, the present subjunctive, isn't actually used very often. You will see it used in writing, but only rarely. I saw it once in a college textbook, something like, it's not necessary that the function f be decreasing on this interval. In that case, you can use the form be plus the ing verb for the subjunctive. But other than that, it's very rare to use. So, and the same goes for the perfect here and the perfect continuous. It's really just the present simple itself that's used for the subjunctive. So you would hear just be and nothing else. But with the past subjunctive, now all forms are used, but the continuous forms, as I mentioned, were being and had been being, they're not used very much. They're used, but not very much. It's really just the simple and perfect that are used frequently. So were and had been. Oh, good night, you guys. Whoever's leaving, good night. And or goodbye, whatever applies. Or maybe both will apply. But anyway. He hasn't been being himself lately. No, that's the indicative. So here's the thing. So if you want to, hasn't been being, that's the indicative. So that's the past perfect indicative. Because remember, has would be the correct conjugation for he in the indicative mood. He hasn't been being himself lately. If you wanted to turn something like that into the subjunctive form, you could. It's possible to say something like, "It is important that he have been being himself," but that again, that's not a form that's used very much in English. It's not used at all anymore in speech. In writing, you might see some very rare examples, but in speech, you won't hear something like that. But anyway, that's the basic explanation of the subjunctive. So you can see that the past. So let's go to the past perfect. So the past perfect indicative has the same form as the past perfect subjunctive. So what does this mean? Well, for the subjunctive forms, like let's say you had, like, for example, had finished. This is the past indicative would be had finished. And the past subjunctive would be, again, had finished. They take the same form. Excuse me. Thank you. But yeah, the past perfect indicative has the same form as the past perfect subjunctive. They both have the same form. So they both will be had finished and had finished. However, there's one cool thing with the past perfect subjunctive, that you can't do with the past perfect indicatives. Oh yeah, how to understand which one is being used. Yeah, that's a good question. I'll get to that in a moment. So one way of telling how they can be used is that the past perfect the past perfect subjunctive can be inverted. Do you guys remember what inversion is? Well, inversion is when you delete a conjugation, a certain conjugation, and then put the main verb at the front of the clause. So let me show you an example. Yeah, I wish he had come to the party is subjunctive. That's correct. So this is what inversion is. Do you see how I moved the verb? I deleted the word if and moved the main verb to the beginning of the clause. That's inversion. With the past perfect subjunctive, you can do that, but you cannot invert past perfect indicatives. So that's the difference. The past perfect subjunctive can be inverted, but not the past perfect indicative. So, remember, do not invert past perfect indicatives. Only past perfect subjunctives can be inverted. So that's one main difference. Now, if you want to know what the difference is between the two, if you don't use inversion, because you don't always have to use inversion, and using inversion can make you sound a bit more formal than normal. So it's really something that it's really not something you should be doing all the time. So just limit the number of times you use inversion. But anyway, so to tell the difference between the past perfect indicative and the past perfect subjunctive, you tell from the context. That's really it. So the context usually makes it pretty obvious as to which one you're using. So, for example, going back to my sentence, if I hadn't failed the test, my parents wouldn't be mad at me. That's subjunctive, because you're talking about a counterfactual, something that didn't happen, but you're talking about what would have happened if it had been a different matter entirely. Oh, okay, Jaspreet, now your comment makes sense. I was like, wait, what? What's he talking about? I was like, what? But anyway. But yeah, so here's an example of the two. And I'm pretty sure you can tell which one's the past perfect indicative and the past perfect subjunctive. Oh, it's okay, Jaspreet. Okay. And then I has like okay, so yeah, exactly, Wolf, you got it. If I had worked harder, I would have passed the test. Had I worked harder, I would have passed the test. Exactly. And I need to hurry because Alan's going to have his class very soon. I think he's going to have his class very soon, actually. Okay, so which one is indicative? And which one is subjunctive? Oh, he hasn't announced it yet? Let me check the class's FAQ. Maybe he's not doing one. I think he is, though. I admit to not reading the schedule very carefully because I accidentally scheduled a class today when someone else had it at that same time. So I was like, oops, my bad. I'm trying to look for the... See, I'm just bad at this. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Let me go back to the classes chat. Oh, Alan took today off from class. Oh, yes! Okay! Yay! Okay! What? Let's go! Let us be going! What? Poggers! Yes, let's go! Okay, I'll stop. Anyway. I need to stop being a clown. Ever wondered what ear rape means? Sorry, I tend to ear rape people. Because whenever I'm excited or scared, I tend to be really loud. If you guys have seen my Minecraft videos, you know this to be true. You know this to be true. Okay, but yeah, see, as Carlos pointed out, one is indicative, the other is subjunctive. I mean, the first, I'm sorry, duh. I mean, the first is indicative, the second is subjunctive. See, I do need sleep. So yeah, going back to this, it's as Carlos said. Let me okay, so let's see. The first is indicative and the second is subjunctive. Let me fix the grammar in this sentence. Yeah, the first is indicative and the second is subjunctive. Because the context makes it clear that the first talks about something that happened and the second talks about something that didn't happen. So that's what the past perfect subjunctive does. It's used to talk about, here, let me point this out. Okay, so let me type this out. The past perfect is used, the past perfect subjunctive, sorry, because we were talking about the indicative earlier. I need to make this distinction. The past perfect subjunctive is used for imaginary situations that took place in the past. Oh, I'm sorry. That didn't take place in the past. See, I do need sleep. I really do need sleep. So it's like, if only this had happened. Like it's counterfactual. So it's like, if only I had been born in a rich family, then I would not be so poor. Because you're talking about something that didn't happen in the past. It's imaginary. It's related to the past, but it's imaginary. It's counterfactual to what actually happened. That is, you were born in a poor family. Okay, so going back to Magical's questions, because Magical actually asked good questions. So, oh well, first Emma asked a question here. The teacher commanded that the two students fight with mats to I think you mean to the death, but yeah. It does make sense though. Yeah, your sense is fine though. Yeah, that's technically subjunctive. Yeah. And yeah, as I pointed out, like, yeah, with the context, you can tell that whether or not a sentence uses the subjunctive. Although, here, let me show you something that's actually potentially confusing. So, because English is dumb. Anyway. It's important that you see a therapist. This can actually be either indicative or subjunctive. So how do you tell the difference? You just again, context. You just rely on the context. So when it's indicative, yeah, see, exactly. Emma's like, what the freak? But with the indicative, it's like he sees a therapist and it's an important fact. But with the subjunctive, it's like, you don't see a therapist, but I want you to. If that makes sense, right? So the first is like, it's an important fact that you see a therapist regularly. Whereas the second one is like, you don't see a therapist regularly, but you should. If that makes sense. Now, I know this is confusing for a lot of people, because in languages like Spanish, the subjunctive and the indicative are completely separate. Like there are no common forms at all. So although the clause, something like es importante que, like it's important that can be either indicative or subjunctive in Spanish too, but the verb forms are very different, but in English they're mostly the same, so that can cause confusion. And in French and German, the subjunctive forms are also different, not completely like in Spanish. There's some overlap in those languages, but there's a lot less overlap than in English. So in German, sometimes you use different forms, and the same goes for French. But in English, the forms are mostly the same, whereas in Spanish, they are completely different. So, yeah, so that can cause confusion, but you get used to it. Wait, hold on. If I were a wizard, I would do magical things. Ha ha! That pun. See, Magical noticed it. But yeah, that's technically correct. Can you explain the difference again? Okay, well, as I said, oh wait, someone else already linked you an explanation. Would it change the meaning of the sentence if I said it's important for you to see a therapist? Yes. In that case, it would be neither. There would be a second clause, so that would be neither indicative nor subjunctive. But I get what you're asking though. You're asking if it would if you rephrase a sentence that if it would change, like if it changes the meaning of the sentence. It does. It does. It would be closer to the second sentence, you know, the one where you use the subjunctive. It's important that you see a therapist, or in British English, it's important that you should see a therapist. And in that case, the sentence "it's important for you to see a therapist" would be closer to in meaning to that sentence, and would probably be clearer, honestly. Like, it would be clearer than just using the sentence "it's important that you see a therapist." But yeah, I recommended that he were more careful. Okay, so so here it actually should be I recommended that he be more careful. We can't really backshit the subjunctive like that in English. In Spanish, you'd have to do that, but in English we don't do that. We just stick with the present subjunctive. So it doesn't matter whether or not the verb is in the past tense or the present tense. In the subordinate clause, you'd have to keep that verb in the present subjunctive. So you could say, "I insist that he be here," or "I insisted that he be here," but not "I insisted that he were here." Although if you want to use were, you'd say, "I wish." You could say, "I wish he were here," or "I wished he were here." Okay, but anyway, there was another question. There was another, someone else also posted a sentence that I think should be corrected right here. So, go far. I noticed that you posted the following sentence. Now, yeah, not necessarily. Would can be an ability in the future or the past. Would can be used for the present though, so it's would is like for the present or future, whereas could is actually not limited to a single time. It could be the past or the present or the future, really. And would actually can be used in the past as well. Yeah, see, could and would are both very confusing verbs because they can be used in pretty much any time, but their meanings would be different. So, like, you could say something like, "I asked him to help me, but he wouldn't do it." In that case, would refers to the past. So it really depends on the context, really. It just depends. These verbs they're kind of tenseless, kind of. Sometimes they involve tense, sometimes they don't. But anyway, let's go back to this sentence here. If I woke up earlier, I wouldn't. I think he means well, actually, let's keep this here. We can correct this. There are two problems with this sentence. Can you tell me which ones they are? hold up. With the first sentence, I should specify that. The second sentence is fine, but oops. I meant first, not first. What the heck is that? First. There we go. Oh, I meant for the second one, and okay, there, question mark. There we go. So here, let me boldface this as well to make this easier to see. There. Oh, actually there are 3 problems. Oh, actually let me fix that. Might as well just fix that. Okay, now there are just 2 problems. Oh, you're leaving, Emma? Aw, bye. Tschüss. I'm glad you were here. Das freut mich sehr. That pleases me. Yeah, Abbage had it. Yeah, Abbage, Luffy, King, yeah, they both had it correct. They both have it correct. It should be had woken and wouldn't have missed. Yeah, and Jasper had it too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, see? So, remember, so this is what I'm going to talk about next. Actually, hold up. I think I'm out. Oops. I need to follow my outline. I'm all over the place now. No, wouldn't have missed. It should be wouldn't have missed in that case. And it should be had woken, not had woke. But yeah. Now to be fair to you, Gofar, to be fair to you, see, and this is an issue. Here, let me post that same sentence again. So, you'll notice that native speaker, some of you have probably already noticed this. You notice that, okay, so here, this is the standard form. And this is the non-standard form. And notice how I'm saying non-standard rather than incorrect. Because there's no single right way of speaking a language, but there is a standard way, as in a way that is widely accepted by official and formal institutions. So, okay. So, here we have these 2 sentences. If I had woken up earlier, I wouldn't have missed your English class. It's 2 a.m. over here. If I woke up earlier, I wouldn't have missed your English class. It's 2 a.m. here. Yeah, this is non-standard. The second one is non-standard. Because, see, with the past subjunctive, which in this case would be woke, you cannot... It's not standard to use the past past simple subjunctive to refer to the past, the imaginary past. It works only for the imaginary present and the imaginary future. But native speakers will sometimes use it that way, but it's not standard. I'm not saying it's wrong, it's just not standard. Oh, you have a question about that? Yeah. So, honestly, Gofar, your sentence, well, excusing the missing have and wouldn't have missed, your sentence honestly wouldn't have sounded non-native, but that's one distinction I need to point out. Both are correct, right? No, not quite. 10, not quite. See, now, I should point out, okay, there are times where you can, mix up, things like the past perfect and the conditional perfect. Here, actually, before I talk about that, let me explain this. So, the past perfect subjunctive is had woken. In the sentence I used, had woken up. Let me just use up as well. The conditional perfect is wouldn't have missed. Right? That's what those forms are. So, Now, and as well, let me talk about the past simple subjunctive as well. The past simple subjunctive form would be woke up. Oops. And the past perfect subjunctive would be, conditional simple. Sorry, conditional simple. It should be conditional simple. Would be what was it? Wouldn't miss. Right? So are you all with me so far? So the past simple subjunctive is woke up and had woken up. The conditional simple is wouldn't miss, and the conditional perfect is wouldn't have missed. Now let's talk about conditionals. So I'm not going to talk about the zero and first conditionals. They're not relevant. So there are two conditionals, right? Second and third conditionals. So if I were rich, I would buy 10 cars. Not really, that's just a waste of money. If I had been selected as class president for the election, during the election or whatever, let me just say during the election yesterday, I would have been happy. I would have been so happy. Or actually, no, let me use a different example. Okay, if I had been more careful, I wouldn't have crashed the car. Yeah, let's do that. So this one is the second conditional. This one is the third conditional. So if I were rich, I would buy 10 cars. If I had been more careful, I wouldn't have crashed the car. So the second conditional follows this formula: present condition, present results. The third conditional, let me edit that message. Hold on. The third conditional is past condition, past results. And if you're wondering what the condition is, it would be the part that comes after the word if. So if I had been more careful, that's the condition. So that's what the second and third conditionals are. And you can actually mix. You could actually mix these. So if you want, so mixed conditional one would be present condition, past results. And mixed conditional number two, and they can be categorized either way. Like the one I have here, it could be reversed. So the first one could be mixed conditional 2 and the second one could be mixed conditional 1, but it does not matter. I'm just going to say that one is number 1 and one is number 2. Okay. So for mixed conditionals 1 and 2, you have a present condition and a past result, or a past condition and the present result. So what does that look like? Okay, so let's do mixed conditional 1. Let's see. This is mixed conditional 1. Mixed conditional number 2 would be something like so here. Okay, so this is mixed conditional 1 and this is mixed conditional 2. Correct? So you can see that you can actually play around with these tenses a bit. So word doesn't always have to follow up with would plus the verb, or had studied, or something like that. Had the past perfect subjunctive doesn't always have to follow up with would have blank or whatever. So do you see how you can actually mix these up? And that's fine as long as it makes sense. So you can't say something like, here, someone actually, this was related to someone's question earlier. I'm trying to see if I can find it. Dang. Where was it? Someone actually asked a good question earlier, and I was trying to explain it like this to answer that. Oh, and so apparently someone also has another sentence here. I will look at that in a bit. Let me see. Where is it? Where is that question? Oh well. Well, basically, that's the difference between that's how the conditionals work. And yeah, there are also zero and first conditionals, but I'm not going to worry about those. That would make this lesson too long. But basically, we use the past perfect subjunctive in any case, regardless of what the result is. It could be a present result or a past result. We use the past perfect subjunctive for past imaginary situations. So what I want you guys to do right now is to provide examples that take the form of if blank had, and then you say insert past participle here, then blank would... Oh, your headphones have a bug? Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry. Would have insert okay. So let me show you the form I want you guys to type your sentences in. Yeah, it should be paid. You misspelled it. But other than that, that sentence is fine. That sentence is fine. So follow this format. Some of you are already following it, but I'll just post it for the record. So I want you guys to follow this format. Oh, you have to go? Oh, okay, bye. And blank in this case refers to someone or something that does not matter. Okay, so if blank had blank, or whatever, like, then blank would blank, or blank would have blank. And some of you have already provided examples. If I had gone a bit slower, I would have hit all the marks. Okay. If I had paid closer attention in school, I wouldn't be struggling financially right now. Okay. And I also forgot to mention, so, I guess I'll mention that in a bit. If I had driven slower, I wouldn't have crashed. See you later, Menard. Thank you for coming. And thank you for the compliment. If I had walked faster, I would have caught the bus. Perfect. If I hadn't left the class, I would have heard some really great notes from the teacher. Sad face. Oh. But yeah, that's a good example. And yeah, I like how some of you guys are mixing the tenses, which is fine, as I said. So you can say had and then whatever, and then you could use the simple would, and then you don't have to use would have after have all the time. No. If I had jumped off the cliff, I would have died. Oh no, you would have. LOL. But yeah, you guys are getting it. And as some of you have just done, I like Carlos's example here. Let me bring it up again. I like this example here because you can actually add ing verbs to these tenses, so they can be continuous forms. So this sentence, I'm replying to Carlos's comment. This sentence demonstrates a conditional progressive, that is, would plus be plus an ing verb, or would not plus be plus an ing verb. So you could actually use ing verbs in this case. So you could say something like, if I hadn't been wasting time on my assignment, I wouldn't be panicking right now because of the deadline. So in that case, you can use ing verbs like that. You could have them in both. You can even have them in both clauses, as I just did in my sentence. So the ing verb doesn't really change whether or not something was in the past or present or future. It just changes I guess the span of the action, the duration. I don't know how to explain it, but it doesn't really change the actual time that the action took place, really. Oh, thank you, Magical. If I had kept doing this, I'm not sure what you mean. Don't you mean I would have regrets rather than I would be regret? I guess you could say I would be regretful. That works too. But not I would be regret. But I think I got what you meant. If we had stayed longer, as I suggested, we wouldn't have missed the fireworks. Yeah, see, there you go. If I had joined this class on time, I wouldn't have missed the chance to come on stage. I forgot that people might be at... Oh, well, there are no hands up right now. I mean, you guys can still raise your hands if you want to come up and talk. But, anyway. Now, there are times, however, I should point out that there are times where it's not a good idea to mix these two things together. It's not a good idea. So, for example... I'm trying to think of an example. Wait, no. I'm trying to think of another example. Hold up. Okay. Actually, let me change this. Let me change this. So there are times where you should not use mixed conditionals. So, can anyone tell me what's wrong with this sentence? So I highlighted the two verbs. One of them's fine, but the other's not. What is wrong with that sentence? Which verb is problematic? Is it the first or the second? Close, Luffy King, close. I think you mean something else. I think you mean something else. So it's the first one that's problematic. So what should the right form be? Yeah, exactly. Hadn't. Yeah, there you go. See, if I hadn't been born. Yeah, see. Again, it's fine to mix conditionals, but there are times where you shouldn't, and this is one of those times. Because if you do that, then the timing of the events in the sentence won't make any sense. If you do that, they won't make any sense. Yeah, I figured it was a typo. Because the S and D keys are like right next to each other, so I got what you meant, though. You're right, Luffy. It would be hadn't. So yeah, see, you guys are getting it. See? Okay, if you here speak Spanish, do we have any Spanish speakers here? I'm sure we do, but I'm curious as to which ones you are. Okay, so yeah, hadn't been would be fine. Oh, I don't get it, Magical. I don't get it. Is that supposed to be a song reference or a sketch reference? I don't know. But anyway, yeah, we do seem to have a few Spanish speakers here. So yeah, hadn't been would be that's the right form. Hadn't been born. Yeah, it would be hadn't been born, yes. Not weren't born. But anyway, So for you Spanish speakers, the past perfect subjunctive had, like, let's take for example had taken, right? In English it would look like this, but in Spanish it would look like this. Right? And of course, you'd have to conjugate the verb depending on the person, but that's what the form would be, right? So it works the same way in Spanish. So in this case, if you speak Spanish, it's not really going to be hard for you to learn the past perfect subjunctive in English because it's the same thing. And it's the same thing with the past simple subjunctive, isn't it? So let's say took, but the past simple subjunctive in English would be took. In Spanish, it would be, there are actually two different forms you could use in Spanish, but I will get to that in a moment. Spanish would be this or this, right? So again, same thing. It's really no different in this case, at least when it comes to conditionals. So yeah, like you can see that in Spanish and English, these two forms are very similar. Oh, is that how it would be in Portuguese? Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Makes sense, because Portuguese and Spanish are closely related, so yeah. Okay, so yeah, so see, and the past perfect subjunctive in English had taken. In Spanish, that would be hubiera tomado. I'm sorry, I meant to say there are two different forms in Spanish as well. So you could say hubiera tomado or hubiese tomado. So that works too. Sorry. But in the past simple subjunctive in English would be took. In Spanish it would be tomara or tomase. So you're not really acquiring something new when you're learning this in English, because it's the same thing. Or Portuguese for that matter. Again, same thing. So if you think of it like that, it's not going to be hard for you to learn the subjunctive. So to provide an example in Spanish, I don't know any Portuguese, so I can't provide any examples in Portuguese. Okay. So okay, so to provide an example here, let's take a sentence in English or a sentence in Spanish and translate it to English. Okay, so in Spanish we have: Si yo me hubiera ido, or hubiese ido, habrías estado triste. If I had left, you would have been sad. So again, you can see that there's a correspondence here. And although I should point out that for the habrías estado triste part in Spanish, you could technically replace that with hubieras estado triste, but you can't do that in English. So you can't use the past perfect subjunctive 2 times in English like you can in Spanish. So you can't do that. Just remember that. But yeah, so if you speak Spanish or Portuguese, it's same thing. Conditionals work the exact same way in both languages. Oh, did I say said? I meant sad. Oops, my bad. I'm sorry. Oops, that's a big oops. But anyway. But yeah, so as you guys can see, the past perfect subjunctive in Spanish, as well as Portuguese and English, they're all used. I mean, I'm sure it works the same way in German and French too, but I don't know enough German or French to provide examples, or Portuguese for that matter. So I'm just going to focus more on Spanish and English. So in Spanish and English, they're both used to point to the past. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the past perfect subjunctive. I don't know what else to explain about it. I think I pretty much talked about it. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it, really. Okay. I can't think of anything else to talk about regarding the subjunctive, really. Huh. Oh, right. Regarding inversion, remember what I was talking about with inversion? You could actually do that with were and the ing form. So you could say something like, so you could actually change that to this. And it's okay. I don't mind if you guys get off topic a little bit. Just try not to overdo it, because we don't want the chat to be filled with like a lot of irrelevant things. Sometimes I go off topic as well, but I try not to like spend too long on an irrelevant topic. But yeah, if you want to talk more about other languages, you'd have to go to the other languages, or other languages too, you know, those channels. Oops. So remember, so you could actually invert this sentence like this. If I were being locked up, I would be sad. Or were I being locked up, I would be sad. So you could actually do that with were and then the ing form as well. Or had, and then the past perfect participle, and then the continuous form. So you could say, so instead of saying instead of this, you could say this. So you could say either, really. You could say this, or you could say this. Oops. If you hadn't been annoying me, I wouldn't be yelling at you. Had you not been annoying me, I wouldn't be yelling at you. So see, you can do that. You could invert in that case too. So you can invert with were plus ing, had plus the past participle, or had plus the past participle plus the ing form. Okay. I'm sorry, but is the second form very popular in everyday speech? That's a good question, actually. I did mention it like very early into the class, so I'll mention it again here. Yeah, if you invert like that, it's not really common to invert clauses like that. It's not really common to invert classes like that. Clauses. Sorry, I said classes. Clauses. It's not common to invert verbs like that. So you can do it, but it sounds a bit formal, though. It sounds a bit formal. So I wouldn't do it a lot. Normally, people would just not invert at all. But it's fine to do in some contexts. Like, if you're speaking formally, then it's fine. Or if you're writing something in a formal context, and again, it's fine. But casually, you can still say it casually as well, but you'd sound a bit literary or poetic or formal if you say it. So if you want to be a little bit fancy, that's fine. That's just a slightly fancier way of saying it, really. I think you mean inversion, not invasion. But I get what you mean, though. Hadn't you taught inversion? Yeah. See, now I'm doing it. Inversion, these questions wouldn't be formed. Now, see, with the way you said it here, hadn't you taught inversion? That's not grammatically wrong, but in this case, it'd be more natural to put not after, like, to separate the not from the had. Had you not taught inversion? In that case, that would sound more natural. Now with the other contexts, such as weren't I being locked up, again, it would sound more natural to put the not like separate the not from were. But it's not wrong to put to use contractions like that, though. And it's good that you did, though, because it's good that you guys are providing examples like this to show what can actually work, even though it may not necessarily be said. Yeah, guys, I have to ask you again, do not speak in other languages here. Like, if you're going to speak in a different language, at least provide a translation. Though I prefer that you not speak in a different language, period. Unless it's adding to the discussion, as some people have done. Like, some people showed that one person told me how these conditionals would be said in Portuguese. So, yeah. But anyway. Yeah, you asked that question earlier. I'm sorry. I meant to answer earlier, but I missed it. I saw it, but I just forgot about it. No, in this case, you should say it's important that he go to the hospital. Or, if you're speaking British English, it's important that he should go to the hospital. Now, if you say something like it was important that he went to the hospital, well, that's not subjunctive. That's indicative. So, yeah, that you're saying that that he went to the hospital was an important fact. No, you're fine, Will. No, you're fine. Like I appreciate that you showed this similarity between with Spanish and Portuguese because again, they're both very closely related. So whatever applies in Spanish often applies to Portuguese as well. So really, the past perfect subjunctive, as you can see, works similarly in all three languages. Like there are some minor differences, but for the most part, they're the same. Yeah, see, you guys are still providing good examples. Had I not been there with you to talk with the policeman, you'd be locked up right now. Yeah, see? So you guys are getting the concept of conditionals. Well, I didn't talk about the zero and first conditionals, but you guys are getting the concept with second and third conditionals, as well as with their mixed counterparts. So I think that's really all I can say. So in short, the past perfect indicative is... we use it when we want to connect 2 points of time in the past, like when we want to show that one point in the past led up to another point. One event started at one point in the past and then led up to another point in the past, or had relevant consequences with regard to another point in the past. Kind of like what the what the present perfect does, but instead of the event ending in the present, it ends in the past. Sorry, I'm all over the place today. And yeah, and the past perfect subjunctive, is used regardless of whether the imaginary event's past simple or past perfect indicative. The past perfect subjunctive is used to show is to show like imaginary situations in the past. So it's counterfactual. We're talking about things that didn't happen. So for example, like I failed the test. If I hadn't failed the test, I wouldn't be sad right now. That's the past perfect subjunctive. So, what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, right. I forgot to mention that someone talked about this earlier. Wait, what's this? I hope my teacher canceled the exam. Okay. I was going to talk about something else important, but this is also quite important. It should be... Okay, so regarding the verb hope, it's technically possible to use the present subjunctive after that verb, but it's not common to do that. Like, people wouldn't do it. So we would just use the present indicative instead. Like, I hope my teacher cancels the exam, or the future simple. I hope my teacher will cancel the exam. Again, the present subjunctive isn't wrong there, but it does not sound natural because people don't really talk like that anymore for the most part, or write like that anymore for the most part. Now if you want to use I wish, then you would have to say I wish my teacher canceled the exam. You have to put that verb in the past subjunctive. Yeah, I think using the present subjunctive after hope was a lot more common before, but nowadays people don't do it. You know, because the subjunctive is kind of stagnated in English. It's not really as widely used as it once was before. I wish my teacher would cancel the exam. That works too. You could think, and in this case, you could think of would as a past subjunctive form of will. So instead of will cancel, you have would cancel. So that works too. Or I wish you'd stop bothering me. Or I wish he would turn his assignments in on time. He's always late. So in that case, would can work like that. It's basically a past subjunctive of will in that case. No, you can't say I wish our teacher cancels the exam. It has to be I wish our teacher canceled, past tense, canceled the exam. I wish my teacher could cancel the exam. That works too, actually. Could works too. So we can't use wish for something in the future. Technically you can. Like that's... It can be pointed... It could be used for the present or the future. I wish my teacher would cancel the exam. Yeah, sorry man, but we warned you not to do that. Just stop. Like, that's not related to this class. But anyway. So we can't use... what was I talking about? Damn, see, no... Damn, now I forgot. Okay, so yeah. So wish... yeah, so wish can be used for something in the present, or a wish in the present, like something you want to happen in the present or something you want to happen in the future. I wish people would one day just get along and there would be world peace. That would be something like the future. Or past, or present. I'm sorry, not past. Or present, I guess. Well, basically would can point to either. But anyway. I wish my teacher canceled. Well, again, you have to say canceled. Like, wish doesn't work with the present tense like that. It has to be the past tense. But you could say, I wish my teacher would cancel the exam, or I wish my teacher could cancel the exam. Yeah, sorry, but you can't type in other languages here. Usually. It depends on whether or not such comparisons are useful in the class, as someone who used Portuguese examples pointed out, who like he provided examples that were relevant to the discussion. But you're just speaking in Russian randomly. Like, what you're saying is not related to this class at all. Okay. But anyway, yeah, cancel's a common verb. We say it all the time. Like, the movie was canceled, or the party was canceled, or the appointment was canceled, or I canceled my dentist's appointment, or stuff like that. We have to use wish for past sentences. Okay, so regarding this, that's what I was going to explain next. So. Yeah, exactly. As the Satch pointed out, it's not so much the language, it's just the content. If you're going to speak in a different language here, it should be relevant to the class, as a few other people here have done. Like, if you want to talk in other languages, go to other languages. Like, there are channels for that. But anyway... Yeah, me too. I know I did it too, Magical. Okay, so regarding wish, now you can use the past subjunctive or the past perfect subjunctive. So, can anyone tell me what the difference is between these two sentences? Because they're both correct, but they mean very different things. Which kind of club? I'll leave that to your imagination. No, I'm kidding. I guess chess club? I don't know. No, the subjunctive isn't necessarily formal. Because again, in American English, we use it all the time, even in informal contexts. Yeah, it's less about politeness and formality and more about whether or not something is real. Okay, someone else also asked a question earlier, but I will get to that in a moment. Yeah, exactly, Carlos. You kind of got it. You kind of got it. Yeah, exactly, Magical. It's just you pointed out. So, with the first sentence, that implies a present wish. But in the second sentence, that implies a past wish is implied. The second sentence implies a past wish. So, I wish I were president of the club, meaning that you're not the president of the club. I wish I had been the president of the club, but you weren't the president of the club. So if you think of it like this, here, if I add additional clauses, it should make more sense. So here, let me do it this way. And this is also another area that natives mess up in. Because, again, they sometimes use... Well, I'll get to that in a moment. But, yeah, if you think of it like this, it makes more sense. I wish I were the president of the club, but I'm not. I wish I had been the president of the club, but I wasn't. Get it? So you see how the first one refers to the present, whereas the second one refers to the past? Meaning that, I wasn't president of the club in my high school, but I wish I had been. Versus, I'm not the president of the club right now, but I wish I were. I wish I had kissed a girl at kindergarten. At kindergarten. I wish I had kissed a girl this morning. Actually, for the second one, you'd still use had kissed, because this morning implies that whatever happened took place in the past. But you could say, I wish I kissed a girl now, though. Yeah, exactly. It's as you said, for the first sentence, the opportunity is... Well, it's not so much... It's not an opportunity that's necessarily implied. But I get what you mean. Like, yeah, like, for example, you're not president right now, but you wish you were. For the second, you wish you'd been the president, but now you're not. Like, that opportunity's gone. So, yeah. So you see? Yeah, you see, you guys are getting it. But some people use the past simple for both meanings. So they'll say something like, oh, I wish I did it earlier, instead of, I wish I had done it earlier. So but that's not standard. It's not wrong, but it's not standard, if that makes sense. But bye, Jaspreet. See you later. Thank you for coming. So it really should be, I wish I had done it earlier. But, yeah, you guys get the idea. So let me actually type that for the record. Yeah, exactly. The first sentence means that they still want to be the president, but the second sentence is just a past wish. Exactly. One's a present wish, the other's a past wish. Okay, so let me show you again. Which one is the more standard form? I wish it weren't so hot right now. I wish I could change the weather. Yeah, see, you're getting it. Now, I just answered this, but just to make sure you guys understand, which one is the more standard form? Let me boldface these verbs. The second. Yeah, see? Yeah, exactly, the second. Yeah, it's number 2. It should be number 2. But again, you will hear some people saying the first one. But it's standard to say the second one. So it should be the second one. But if you say the first one, people are not going to misunderstand you. So again, this is one of those cases where even if you mess up the tense, people will still understand you. And this is something that natives do too. Not all of them, but some of them do it. So you'll still be understood. You just will sound a bit imprecise. Anyway, some native people, I wish Chiman said this earlier. Most native people, I wish Chiman had told this. I mean, had said, said whatever, this earlier. Oh yeah, that sounds a little bit better. Thank you. Actually, you know what? Regarding the second one and regarding both of these, I'd say it's like a 50-50 thing. Like it's like half of the native speakers would say the first, half of them would say the second. So it's like a 1 in 2 chance of hearing that. Because some people would not say the past simple here. Others would say the past simple. So it's that's what I've noticed anyway. So it's like it's a hot mix. It's a hot ass mix. You know, it's just a hot ass mess. But that's language for you. That's just language for you. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about before I end class, but I cannot remember what it was. Magical is so useful, honestly. He's been so helpful to everyone. And it's clear that he's a green student because he knows what he's talking about. If he ever becomes a teacher in the past, I would love to see in the present. Why did I say past? If you future. See, wow, okay. If he ever becomes a teacher in the future, I would love to see his class to go to his classes and see how he teaches, because it's always interesting to see non-natives teach, because they can provide new insights to the for the language that natives might have problems explaining, because they're not in a position where they had to learn this stuff. They technically had to learn it, just not with effort, because we natives, we just soak this stuff up naturally. We soaked it up naturally. But anyway, yeah, he is smart, isn't he? I wish I wish I will get up, or I wish I would get up earlier tomorrow. I don't think either of those sounds very good, honestly. Yeah, now in general you could say I wish I would get up earlier, but to say it like that with something like tomorrow, that just sounds weird, honestly. But you could say, I hope I'll get up earlier tomorrow. That works. But anyway, there was one more thing I wanted to talk about. Oh yes, someone asked a question earlier regarding the differences between Spanish conditionals and English conditionals. So this was the question. He said, I don't understand how this means the same, because in Spanish, were I being locked up means... No, see, you're misunderstanding. See, were I being locked up is an inverted form. It's not I were being locked up, it's were I being locked up. So here, let me actually reply to this. This is the comment that I'm currently addressing. So, okay, so were I being locked up is an inverted form of if I were being locked up, which of course in this case, as you said, would be, in Spanish it would be si me estuvieran encerrando. But well, actually wait, no, I'm sorry, I misread you. Well, I mean, if you want to be more literal, I guess it would be si me estuviera siendo well, whatever. But basically, no, were I being locked up is like an inverted form of if I were being locked up. So you'd use a subjunctive in Spanish in that case. You'd still use it, because it's not the same thing as I were being locked up, or rather I was being locked up in this case. So I think you misunderstood. Oh yeah, I guess, yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, he wanted to translate word by word. Yeah. So I mean, because in English, in Spanish, you'd still translate it like that, something like that anyway. Because I don't want to provide a faulty example because I'm still learning Spanish and I don't want to provide something that's potentially grammatically incorrect. But yeah, like you'd still translate it as a subjunctive in Spanish in that case. So like something like estuviera siendo encerrando, or whatever, however you'd say it. But going back to this, okay, someone posted something here. She wishes she had more free time. Yeah, that's the present. I wish I'd bought that house. That's the past. Yeah, see, exactly, you get it. But anyway, yeah, I'd say it'd be encerrado, not encerrando. Because yeah, that means locking up. So if you want to use like the past participle, it would be encerrado in that case. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce Spanish for crap. But anyway, but yeah, like you'd have to use like it's not this progressive form you should use there. Yeah, see, exactly. It says Carlos95 said locked up would be encerrado. Locking up would be encerrando. Yeah, I thought it sounded weird. I think that might have been a typo on this part, though. But yeah, like it should be encerrado. So like you could say. So it'd be like, we're being locked up would be estuviera siendo encerrado. But anyway. What was I going to say? How am I learning Spanish? Oh, I just watched things like Dreaming Spanish on YouTube. He speaks in Castilian. It's a native speaker of Castilian Spanish, and he talks about various things. He makes various videos about comprehensible input, with comprehensible input, and about comprehensible input. Like, his lessons are very easy to follow for people who don't know Spanish. So that's how he. Yeah, that's how you'd say it in Spanish. Yeah, exactly. We're being locked up. Estamos siendo encerrados. Yeah. Or if you want to use the past subjunctive, like if we were being locked up, it would be si estuviéramos or estuviésemos siendo encerrados. So you can see that there's like a parallel there. But anyway, one thing I should point out is that I know some of you have already noticed this, but I'll say it anyway. Sometimes was, you know how there's the past subjunctive were in English? Or I don't know Cantonese or Mandarin for that matter, sorry. But I'd love to learn it though. It just sounds so cool. But anyway. Yeah, exactly. If we were being locked up. Si estuviésemos siendo encerrados. Or if we had been being locked up. Well, that would sound really clunky in both English or Spanish. But in Spanish it would be si hubiéramos or hubiésemos. Trying to remember how to say. I forgot. Like something like that. And then been would be estado. That's what it is. Estado and then siendo, I don't remember, something like that, I don't know, and then encerrados. I don't want to mess it. So if someone could type, yeah, see, okay, yeah, there you go. Like if we had been locked up, or if we had been being locked up, like I think it would be estado and then siendo instead of just sido, but. Anyway, but going back to what I was saying, the past subjunctive were sometimes this is replaced by was in American English. Most often it is replaced by was in British English. So were can sometimes be replaced by was in American English, but in British English it's almost invariably replaced by was, because in British English you're not likely to hear were. So instead of saying something like, if I were you, this would be American English. In British English, if I was you would be more likely heard. Although that would sound really weird to us Americans, but in British English it's fine. So that's something to keep in mind regarding the subjunctive. But sometimes, exactly. To us Americans, that sounds weird. Like, I once heard in a video game, and I was like, what? Like, no, it should be were. But was isn't wrong. It's not wrong. It was wrong at some point in the past, but nowadays it's actually standard. That's fine. Yeah, that song by Meghan Trainor, where she sings, if I was you, I'd want to be me too. She says, if I was you, instead of if I were you. Or Justin Bieber in his song, if I was your boyfriend, I'd never let you go. He says was instead of were. So some Americans do use was like that, but more of them would use were. So that's just how weird our dialects are in English. Oh, Justin Bieber's Canadian. That's true, but Canadian English is closer to, it's like, pretty close to American English, so yeah. But again, like, see, with American English, sometimes people use was instead of were. And like in some cases they will use were, like always, like for example, if I were you. But in other cases they may use was. So you might hear something like, I wish she was smarter, instead of I wish she were smarter. So in American English you'd likely hear both. But like in British English you'd probably hear just the first one. Although I'm sure there are a few British English speakers who would use were. But yeah, that's something I should point out. Some people don't know how to use our subjunctive. Yeah, that's the thing. Almost no one knows how to use it. Like it's just something that's just it does exist in English, but it's so misunderstood. Oh, you hear was in Canada too? Oh, that's odd. I would expect it to be like were instead, but I guess I was wrong about Canadian English on that aspect. So, huh. It is important that you be here. Yeah, see? Be there. Yeah, although it's important that you are there is also acceptable, but it would mean something different. As in, it's an important fact that you are currently there. Not, I want you to be there. Oh, bye. Bye. See you later, Jane. If I pronounce your name correctly. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's a dialectal thing, Carlos. Sometimes you'll hear things like we was or you was. That's dialectal. That's dialectal. That's something completely different. Okay, sociolectal is fun. I'm glad to see that we have another teacher in the chat here. Miss Ducky. Miss Ducky is oh so lucky. Okay, but anyway. I think I might have diverged from the original topic because I was trying to point more to the past perfect subjunctive, though I guess in that case, I was bound to talk about the subjunctive in general anyway, so whatever. Oh, and one more thing I should point out before I end the class. It's... So let me point this out. So, here's a trick question. Which is correct? This is a trick question. Which is technically correct? Oh, you know the answer? Okay, let's go! No, the high is optional in that. The word high is optional in that sentence. I mean, you're a teacher. I mean, I'm sure you know the answer. Although it's possible for a teacher not to know the answer to every question, but you get what I mean. Anyway. Okay, so technically it's both. It's both. It's technically both. And the... See, okay, so... This is oh my god, why is this thing glitching? Like, what the freak? What the freak? What the freak? Come on. Oh my god, like... my Discord window just froze. Oh my god. Oh my god. No! Oh, it did close. Okay. High time means, like, it's about time, basically. Okay, so it's technically both in this case, although almost no one would say the second nowadays were. See, this is a past subjunctive construction, so either was or were could work. But you know, in history, it was actually more common to use were. But nowadays, it's much more common to use was, and you will rarely hear were used in this context. They have different meanings? I don't know. Like, that's what I've researched so far, and that's what I was told. Like, here, let me see if I can show you an example of what... Because I'm pretty sure... Here, let me grab it. Because there was a really good page that explained it. Oh man, what if I don't have it? I might not have the bookmark anymore. Darn. English. Reminds you of Spanish, or German, or French, or Portuguese. Ha! I'll stop. Okay, let's see. You know what? Screw it. I'm not even gonna bother. Oh. I suppose that might be it. But, I don't know, though. I guess that might be it, actually. You might be right, Miss Ducky. I could be wrong in that case. I guess that might be it. I think that's how people would interpret those anyway. But regardless of what these mean, like the first one is not what people would say. Most people would say nowadays. You might hear it in from what I read. I think you might hear it in a certain area in Britain, like the UK, a certain area in the UK. I can't remember exactly what area, but most people would just say was. So that's something to consider. But in any case, I mean, I could be wrong about that, like, but at least you guys know that both are possible. Yeah, that's the thing about the subjunctive. It's so fickle. There are times where you can use it and it would mean something very interesting, and something very interesting. There are times where, like, something very different from the indicative. I mean, like you could change the meaning quite a bit. Because as I just said, like with my example earlier, it's important that you see a therapist, and it's important that you see a therapist. And it was like, what? Which one? It's like, it depends on the context. Oh, thank you for posting that definition. Yeah, I think you might be right, Miss Ducky. Actually, I might be wrong in that case. Though I swear to God, I looked this up and like, or maybe I missed something. I have to read more into it. But yeah. Anyway, I think that's it for this class. We've been 3 hours. My classes normally don't go past 3 hours, so. What on earth? Oh, one more thing to point out regarding the use of word. There's also this idiom. I should point this out just so you guys aren't. You might hear this occasionally. I would have weren't so. I would have weren't so. Now, in this case, this is the past subjunctive, but would, in this case, would is functioning as a synonym of wish. You could think of it like wish, basically. I wish it weren't so. Because would was used like that back then in history, but nowadays we don't really use it like that, outside of fixed expressions, such as I would it weren't so. Or quite simply, would it weren't so. Sometimes the I is omitted. Would it weren't so. Or even just would it weren't. I would it weren't. Like I've heard that, like the would I would it weren't so. I've heard that a few times. But again, this is very old fashioned. This is very old-fashioned. Like my reckon? Sort of. Like reckon, you will hear that more often in British English than in American English. Although you'll hear reckon a bit here in the South as well. But in generally speaking, American English, reckon isn't all that common. In British English, it's more common. Basically, I would it weren't so means I wish it weren't. I wish it weren't so. I wish it weren't so. As in, I wish that weren't the case. Yeah, exactly. I wish it weren't like this. I wish it weren't the case. I wish it were not like this. I wish it were different. I wish it were different. But that's one really old-fashioned use of would. So you should not use it like that outside the idiom I would it weren't so. Okay. Well, that's all I can say regarding the class. 3 informative hours. I'm glad you all liked it, even though it was kind of all over the place. I did have an outline, but I honestly barely adhered to it. I barely stuck to it. It's oh god. No problem. I'm glad you all found it informative. So remember, do not overuse the past perfect indicative. Your sentences will sound clunky as hell. Don't do it. So don't you say something like, I had gone to the store, then I had went to the movie, I had gone to the movies, or something like. No, don't do that. Please don't. Gross. Ew. Just no. And I said had went. I meant had gone. But yeah, don't, please. Okay. But anyway, I'm glad you all had fun. Facts. So hopefully you all can use the past perfect. You all know how to use the past perfect indicative and the past perfect subjunctive. Hopefully you guys know how. You guys have learned how to use these forms correctly. Yeah, I say the H in adhesive and in adhere. Do people not say it? I didn't know that people don't say it. I didn't know that people didn't say it. Sometimes I'm like, what? Like, I've always pronounced it. I'm like, what? Like, it just doesn't sound right to me to take the H out. Adhesive, adhere. No, I would say adhesive, adhere. I don't know. Maybe that's an acceptable alternative pronunciation. I haven't looked at how at a dictionary, so to determine that. So I wouldn't know, but yeah, I would just say the H. Now herb, yeah. I don't think anyone. Do some people say the H in herb? Huh. Because I have always pronounced it without the H. In that case, I think that's the typical pronunciation. Herb, I think herb could also work. Again, like, see, that's a stupid thing with English. There's more than one way to pronounce a word sometimes. Often. It's stupid. But anyway. I think some people pronounce it, but some people don't. How to use would? We'll talk about that another time. Can I use word with the subjunctions that take... I'm not sure what you mean here. Every language is stupid in a way. You're not wrong. You are not wrong. You are not wrong at all. But I am getting tired, and I need to go and do something in like 2 hours, so hopefully you all have found this class useful. So thank you all so much for watching this, and I will go ahead and stop the recording.